Coming up,
we are ancient people extolled by Unekhanahim to keep certain ways intact until the very end of time.
Howard Paden is a Cherokee language warrior and executive director of Cherokee Nation's language department. Learn about his unique journey finding his purpose through our language. Plus, graphic artist Jeff Edwards draws us into his world of unique designs and creative preservation of Cherokee culture and language.
Artwork is a really powerful weapon, and artwork can say something and you never have to speak a word.
And radio programmer Mary Jean Robertson shares how she's dedicated the last 50 years of her life to amplifying Native voices on the radio in San Francisco.
You have to be a little bit crazy to do radio, but I think it's important for people to get the news and information out to their community.
The Cherokees.
A thriving American Indian tribe.
Our history.
Our culture.
Our people.
Our future.
The principles of a historic nation.
Sewn into the fabric of a modern world.
Hundreds of thousands strong.
Learning. Growing.
Succeeding. And steadfast.
In the past, we have persevered through struggle.
But the future is ours to write.
Osiyo.
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 These are the voices of the Cherokee people.
Osiyo, welcome to the Cherokee Nation. I'm Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr. For generations, others have told the Cherokee story. But now, through this groundbreaking series, we're taking ownership of our own story and telling it as authentically and beautifully as possible. I hope you enjoy these profiles of Cherokee people, language, history, and culture. Wado.
Osiyo, it's how we say hello in Cherokee. I'm your host, Jennifer Lauren, at the Saline Courthouse Museum near Rose, Oklahoma, a historic site where you can learn about Cherokee Nation history. In today's Cherokee Almanac, you'll learn about a historic figure named Narcissa Chisholm Owen, a strong and resilient Cherokee woman who advocated for education and women's rights.
Narcissa was a woman of her moment, as we all are, and she understood the changes and the contours of the world around her.
We'll have more on that coming up a little bit later in our Cherokee Almanac. But first, Howard Paden is the executive director of the Cherokee Nation Language Department and is a true language warrior. Overseeing multiple programs to help preserve and perpetuate our language, Howard's passion is deep-seated in his past, but also fueled by his fears and hopes for our future.
We are ancient people extolled by Unekhanahim to keep certain ways intact until the very end of time. All these things hinge on our sacred language, and without it, we can't remain a people which we were created. Today we stand here giddy because we know we haven't begun to fight. Because this war isn't in the battlefields. This battle is going to be fought internally within our hearts. This building that was named after one of our Cherokee heart generals, Durbin, this language campus is a signal to the world that they have woken a sleeping giant. We are not here to just speak Cherokee, but we're here to be a Nikaduwag.
Udawadis tisquatni dawado. Chalakon his new sus doglo staniho. I'm Howard Paden, and I work at the language department, and I'm the executive director here. My dad was an evangelist, so we moved quite a bit. I think I was in 9 different schools, and Cherokee was really important. There was a responsibility, it wasn't just an identity. I think about 3 or 4 years old, one of the things I had told my dad, one of my life goals was to learn the language. And so finally, in the 3rd grade, we came back to Stillwell. We got to get boy home so he can learn our language. And that is Alicia. It's my wife. We had a youth group. There was one night I had a dream that just praying for people. Woke up and I was working the altar, but it wasn't in English. So I got up the next day and I said, I think we're supposed to go overseas. And we went to Cochabamba, Bolivia. So they taught Spanish. You just go in and you have these teachers that refuse to speak to you in English. At some point, something broke. I could understand what was going on. That style of teaching, this is how you save language. When I came back, we went to Durban. If you knew Durban, he just had thousands of documents that he had been writing on for years, and he was taking different books off the shelf. Finally found this book and he flipped it open. It's all of this plan of how to build a master apprentice program. He said, hey, is this what you boys are wanting to build?
We believe that in order for us to survive as a people, our language has to survive. So in a way, fighting for the language is a similar sort of context to what our ancestors used to have to go through when they did go to war. The thing really you have to understand about Howard is he fights daily for the language. I think it's still in his heart, he's a Pentecostal preacher, but at this point it's like the language is a part of his gospel for him.
Imagine losing a fourth of the plant population. This is what's happening to languages. And you realize that there's an ethnosphere that's dying. We have about 1,800 Cherokee speakers, so they're less than 0.5%. They have the original design purpose of what our Creator made us to be. They see the world through the lens of true, authentic Cherokees. It's really, really hard to articulate. They tell a story in Cherokee that's so descriptive that it's a movie that runs in front of them. That's what's happening in Cherokee speakers' homes. Folks that haven't been able to stick their head in that bubble and see, they're not wrapping their heads around what we're losing. And it scares me. It scares all of us. We work all day on different ideas and how to advance this language, how to advance the cause. We have a family now in our village that have their kids here at immersion. Their whole family's ran in Cherokee. And we're about to break ground on 8 more houses. There'll be at least 7 villages that's ran in Cherokee. There'll be more schools. And then there'll be businesses that's ran in Cherokee. What we want is there never to be a time on this planet that we don't have first language speakers. So we're fighting for the world. That's why it's important.
Bold designs, thought-provoking ideas, and lots of Cherokee syllabary are just a few things you'll find in Jeff Edwards' art. As a graphic artist and language technologist for Cherokee Nation, Jeff is constantly pushing the Cherokee language into new and exciting places.
A lot of people, if they don't understand what digital artwork is, they think the computer draws the artwork for you. And so I always tell people when I turn my computer on, I start a new project, my canvas is like a painter's. It's as white can be. It's the exact same concept as a painter or someone drawing. My name is Jeff Edwards. I'm a language technologist at Cherokee Nation, and I'm also a Cherokee graphic artist. I'm from Vian, Oklahoma. I lived here my whole life. It's a really close-knit community. We didn't have much, but we didn't know any better. I went to Haskell Indian Junior College in Lawrence, Kansas, and at the time when I was going, there was at least one student there from every tribe. And so it was really kind of an eye-opening experience. I didn't realize it at the time, but it kind of started me on a path of working with Cherokee language and the Cherokee tribe. And so I received a call that there was a job opening as an admin assistant. And it was at the Cultural Resource Center. And the Cultural Resource Center is where all of the fluent Cherokee speakers work. And my job was to create Cherokee books in Cherokee. And so I started working with the translators downstairs, and I kind of started seeing my calling right then. After working at the Cultural Resource Center, they started the Cherokee Immersion School. And so what those kids do is they show up at the school, and English is left at the door. The teachers are all master fluent speakers, and that child is taught the entire school day in the Cherokee language. We wanted the students at the immersion school to have everything that an English school would have. And I didn't realize that I was becoming a graphic artist. I was just simply making things the kids wanted or needed. So I had worked probably 8 years at the immersion school, and a new department had formed. It was called Language Technology. And the purpose of that department was to work with technology companies to have the Cherokee language represented on their devices. So I started working with Roy Boney Jr. and Joseph Erb at the time, and both of those guys are Cherokee artists. And so for about 3 years, they just bugged me to death, to do this art. I didn't want to sound offensive, but I have no interest in that. I don't have an interest in artwork. Roy kind of really pushed me to do something, just make something. And so finally, they got under my skin, And so I thought, well, what can I make? That night I was thinking it'd be really cool. I can make a Monopoly board, but instead of using the street names, I'll put Cherokee communities on there. And we were assigned a very special translator, Durbin Feeling. Durbin had a request. He wanted to put Andrew Jackson in the jail. And that was his only request. So, boy, I made sure that happened. And so I entered that piece in the Catoosa Art Market. So they had the reception dinner that night, and I had won Best in Division in first place in my category. And so I started out with a win. So then we had the Trail of Tears art show. So I made a piece that was titled Cherokee on the Brain. And that piece is, if you did a scan on me, this is probably what my brain looks like. I'm infected. I'm infected with the Cherokee bug, just kind of as a joke. So then it came around to the judges, and I won a Judge's Choice Award with that piece. And then they get to the final one, the Best in Show, Jeff Edwards, Cherokee on the Brain. Okay, today we're here at the Spider Gallery in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. This is a place for local artists that are Cherokee to show their works that they've created. And so I have several pieces in. Some of them are earlier pieces. The Messenger, that's just the owl has always been known as the messenger, usually bad message. The piece here is titled Syllabary Seal. I wanted to make a Cherokee seal out of Cherokee Syllabary. And this piece here is my first attempt at making old school 3D artwork by using red, blue, and white. So whenever you put the old 3D glasses on, the Cherokee seal and sequoia appears to be coming off the page. Just this year, I was honored to receive the Trail of Tears Award at the Trail of Tears Art Show. And it shows all these different routes that they took to get to present-day Oklahoma. But that piece there is just really special because to me, it tells the entire Trail of Tears story in one simple piece of artwork. Artwork is a really powerful weapon. And artwork can say something and you never have to speak a word. I've been asked before to make English artwork, and I'm like, I'm a Cherokee graphic artist. I don't make English anything. If you want that, go buy it. It's available for you. And then if you do want something in Cherokee, look me up.
During the late late 19th century, a Cherokee woman named Narcissa Chisholm Owen experienced prosperity as well as hardships. In this Cherokee Almanac, we learn about Narcissa's influence and, no matter her circumstances, how she exemplified strength and resilience, as did many Cherokee women before her. The mother of Cherokee painting, Narcissa Chisholm Owen, was born in 1831 in Indian Territory to old settler Cherokee chief Thomas Chisholm. But there was a lot more to Narcissa's story than art.
What we know about Narcissa's childhood from her memoirs is she mentions that she was kind of a idle-minded kid and had a love for drawing.
While Narcissa showed an affinity for art at an early age, it would not be a skill she honed until her retirement. As a young woman, Narcissa became a teacher and moved east.
Narcissa moves away from the Cherokee Nation and eventually marries an active businessman by the name of Robert Owen. They make their life in Lynchburg, Virginia, which winds up in some ways being the heart of the Confederacy.
Narcissa and Robert had 2 sons together, Robert Jr. and William. They enjoyed a lavish lifestyle. After her husband's death, however, Narcissa became the sole provider for her 2 sons.
Her life was having to start all over. Her husband was deceased, her boys were in college and doing very well, and she had to replace herself in society. Once a Lynchburg socialite, she had nothing anymore. And so she found her way back to Indian Territory to teach school at the Cherokee Seminary, to teach music classes.
Now back in Oklahoma, Narcissa ensured her son Robert found success.
Narcissa's long-term connections to the Cherokee Nation enable her to return home, but they also enable Robert to start a life there. Without her, he never would have been one of the first state senators from Oklahoma.
Narcissa retired from teaching and began to help her son Robert with his political career.
Later in life, Narcissa travels with her son, Robert L. Owens, and it's during this trip that she reconnects with some of her older hobbies. She loved painting as a young girl, and she takes that back up. But she's also inspired by what she's seeing and some of the art of the day, and that's when she takes up portraiture and is inspired by landscapes.
In her published memoirs, Narcissa shares about her journey back to art and the joy it brought her.
I have found art my greatest resource and genuine pleasure and pastime.
Narcissa would go on to paint iconic figures of both Cherokee and American people. Narcissa painted the inventor of the Cherokee Syllabary, Sequoyah, and Thomas Jefferson and his descendants. She also captured her own image on canvas in a self-portrait. For Narcissa, the early years of the 1900s were filled with art and politics. Narcissa advocated for women's rights and joined the suffrage movement.
Just think of Narcissa Owen herself. Her son is a U.S. senator, but she couldn't even vote for that man. She couldn't vote for anybody. She thought that to be a democratic wrong that needed righted.
In fact, Narcissa fought to right 2 wrongs.
Narcissa's advocacy for suffrage winds up doing double duty, because not only is she advocating for women broadly to gain the right to vote, she's also advocating for Native women, many of whom, even if white women gained the right to vote, would not have gained the right to vote themselves.
Narcissa passed away on July 12th of 1911 and did not get to see women gain the right to vote.
Her greatest gifts to the Cherokee Nation and to America were when she was an elderly woman. From about 1900 until her death in 1911, was when Narcissa Owen really shined, and her name became nationally known because of that.
Narcissa was a woman of her moment, as we all are, and she understood the changes and the contours of the world around her, and so she developed thinking around those issues that responded to the things that she was concerned with. Suffrage, developing a world that she saw as potentially a better place than how she left it.
Narcissa Chisholm Owen, a teacher, a mother, an artist, and a suffragist. A Cherokee woman who met all situations with her head held high and a can-do attitude.
To be brief, I think life is very much what we make it and what we make of ourselves. Riches or prosperity do not make happiness. Neither do poverty and sorrow make misery. We can lift ourselves above these things and be happy and contented and useful in spite of all that we commonly call hard luck or misfortune.
Osiyo sanas.
Osiyo oli.
Gado hadane.
Ani woni skanchini. Dakstela hake.
Huma. Sanas hafla inedo.
Ani woni skankani tikana sula inia. Ahadi ditli you Jonah Dusty.
Ditli you Jonah Dusty.
Ahani gawani histoti.
Gawani histoti.
Idalena.
No ini woni skagani.
For 50 years, Mary Jean Robertson has been a voice for Native advocacy on the radio in San Francisco, California. Today, Mary Jean continues to carry on her family's tradition of sharing information while ensuring Native voices are heard.
You're listening to KPOO San Francisco, 89.5 FM. This is WebWorks, Voices of the Native Nations, right here on your community radio station. Or we're streaming on kpoo.com. You can listen all over the universe and everywhere. We are a local community radio station. We are on the air because you care. Osiyo, Gigi Mary Jean Dagvadoa. Hi, my name's Mary Jean Robertson, and I'm a programmer on KPOO Radio in San Francisco. It's a small community radio station. Almost everybody here in the station is an unpaid volunteer. So you have to be a little bit crazy to do radio, but I think it's important for people to get the news and information out to their community. I think that it's really important to continue on a regular basis so people learn to trust you, learn to listen for you, and that's one of the major reasons why I've stayed on the air here in San Francisco for 50 years. I have been very lucky because I moved here in 1969, and 1968 was the summer of love. So it was like an explosion of freedom, an explosion of people dancing in the streets and doing all kinds of wild and crazy things. And I loved it. And ethnic studies started, so I was able to attend college taking classes that were interesting to me. So there were so many things that were happening. And then I got invited to do the radio, and it was all over. I was addicted to the radio. We moved into my current flat in 1976, and it's under rent control, so I'm never leaving. I live in San Francisco, one of the most iconic, beautiful cities in the world, and it's important to get the correct news out, as truthful and as positive as it can be. There's so much misinformation being passed around these days. We don't get federal funding. We don't sell advertising, so we're not beholden to anybody, which means every single programmer has the right to play the music they want to play, to organize their shows the way they want to organize them, and to emphasize the community that they're part of. We are all people. We want to make sure that there's always a Palestinian show, there's always an Irish show, and there will always be an American Indian show on KPOO for as long as we're on the air. San Francisco is also the hub of activism. Alcatraz started here, ethnic studies started here, and they're able to have a place to talk about their issues. So you'd hear about those announcements, and you'd also hear Native music. All genres. We play every genre that Native people have. We've got Black Fire, we've got war, we've got old-time polka war dance songs. We've got stomp dance songs. We have all the CDs, all the records of practically every tribe in the country. So we'll play a download from the Cherokee Nation of Tommy Wildcat playing the flute, or Robert telling one of those marvelous stories with the kids, like the little kid counting to 20 in Cherokee. That was so awesome. So I'm very lucky to have been able to do the kinds of interviews and the call-in shows from Myron Dewey calling in from Standing Rock, from Sarah James calling in from the Alaska National Wildlife Refuge, Roberta Blackgoat calling in from the Dene Nation, the Navajo Nation. We're very lucky in San Francisco because for about the last 4 years, we've been under the auspices of Kim Shuck as the Poet Laureate of San Francisco. I called Kim and said, "Can you call in and tell us a little bit about this?" It's funny when you interview friends because they know things about you and you know things about them that you don't necessarily want everybody to know, but you never know what's going to come out in a live interview. So we laugh a lot when we're together. The friendships that I have made through the years here, I love the fact that it is a media city. It is the center of the West Coast information office of many, many agencies and places. What do I do to share information? I make a commitment that I'm going to be here every week that I'm on the air. I make a commitment to all of the people that are doing all the activism all over the world to be here to share the stories, the information. I'm doing this out of a tradition. My family has been passing down information to people as part of a tradition in my family. And I feel like radio is fulfilling me because it's part of my living tradition and it's important. It's more from ancient traditions to now. It's a living tradition of sharing information. And so for me, radio has been that blessing to be able to share that kind of information. KPOO San Francisco, 89.5 FM. This is WebWorks, Voices of the Native Nations, produced by Mary Jean Robertson and supported by you, the community. We wouldn't be on the air without your support. So keep on keeping on. Tell your friends, tell your family. Listen every second, third, fourth, and fifth Wednesday of every month. We love you. Take good care.
We hope you enjoyed our show, and remember you can always watch entire episodes and share your favorite stories online at Osio.tv. There is no Cherokee word for goodbye because we know we'll see you again. We say, do-da-da-go hunt-y. Wado.